60-10
69.
or 420s.
69 and 420s. They like both of them. Ah, the French. Think about it.
Those weird French.
Anyway, that's going to be our B-roll. We're going to put that as the bloopers. This is technically our 3rd episode.
Is it?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
4, 5. Did I tell you about French and the number 80?
Did I tell you about how Geminis, we have squirrel problems and we be like, squirrel? And you just did it again?
I did, didn't I?
Anyway, so the reason that we decided to link up today was, number one, to catch back up on where we had left off with the previous conversation, which we're going to talk about, which is the IULs. And another thing, because I keep getting sent these very similar videos that I'm very frustrated about, and because it is impacting people's generational wealth, the strategy that they use to secure their generational wealth. So I'm going to touch on what that is. I'm not going to go into a whole much detail. I'm going to introduce the reason why I hit you up today. We're going to go into IULs, and then we're going to swing back to finishing up the conversation with what I want to educate people on about securing their generational wealth. So the video that I keep getting sent, and it's more than one video at this point, I've had multiple people send me these videos where a person who claims to be an expert of some type is telling people that they should not acquire ownership of their parents' property because when they acquire the ownership, they would pay capital gains tax. I'm going to start by saying that is not true. And stay tuned to the second half of this discussion so that you can find out what is true and why I'm so passionate about having this discussion. So let's go ahead and dive into the IULs, because this is another way of getting generational wealth going in the present tense and not waiting until someone passes on. So I'm going to shout out to you, Rashad. Can you share? Also, we are in our workout gear because we are healthy people. I just want to point that out. So I just was looking at you like, yes, Actively Black. Oh, hey, this is Actively Black. The shirt. Yes. And the shirt. You know.
I'm about to say that should definitely be a sponsorship,
What?
Send me more
yes.
gear.
Let's get the sponsorship going. So let us know, what is it? Why did you want to share information about IULs? It's something that I'm interested in as well, but what do you believe people need to know, and why? What do they need to know, and why do they need to know it?
Well, basically, IULs are the new kid on the block. They're exotic, they're sexy, they sound good, and all that good stuff. But I do think it's important that people do, at the very least, if you're going to go into it, you should at least have kind of a baseline understanding of what you're diving into, so that you don't just get got by somebody that's trying to. So anyway, basically, there's usually 2 main types of life insurance. That's basically what an IUL is, a life insurance type of policy. There's term life, and then there's whole life. Well, the term life is going to be for the if it happens, and the whole life is going to be for the when it happens. So basically, for the term life, they're typically going to be 10, 20, or 30-year terms, hence the name. And basically, they're usually going to have the higher dollar benefit levels, typically to cover in the event, cover a mortgage, for example, in the event of you passing before you're able to pay it off and your family will be able to live into it. That's a term life policy.
Okay, so if a 30-year-old got a term life policy for 20 years, what you're saying is they're 30 today, they bought the policy. God forbid, but if anything happened unexpectedly before they're 50, it would provide that coverage. But if they live beyond 50, they have certain benefits to it, right?
If they live beyond 50, then the policy is either going to end, or the premium, what you pay for it monthly, will skyrocket through the roof.
Okay. When the policy ends at 50, what do they get as being the person who owned the policy?
That depends. If you get a return of premium policy, basically you'll get either the majority or all of the premiums that you paid back. So if you were paying $50 a month for 20 years, whatever the math on that is, you get all of that back. I'm not doing the math. I have calculators
It's
for that
all
now.
good.
But basically you'll get you like say either most or all of that back. Those policies are going to be a little bit more expensive, but there's definitely a benefit to that, especially if you go beyond the 20 or 30 years. Then you get a paycheck, or excuse me, a check back for $40,000, $50,000, or whatever the case may be. So that's going to be a plus there. Now, with the regular standard type term life policy, basically it's going to be less expensive, but at age 50 or 60 or whatever the case may be, that's it. Yeah, peace of mind for 20 years. Yep, peace of mind for 20 years.
So you have to know which one you're getting. Yep. If you want to get the money back, because it would be great, because like you're securing the just in case, God forbid, but just in case, and then it's almost like a savings account that you can then get part or all of it back if you live beyond the term. So that's great. It gives you that peace of mind as well as a future return. And I guess people really already fully understand what a whole life policy is that it remains for the duration of their life. And so it's there to handle all those final expenses, as well as, like you mentioned, like if there's a mortgage left, if there's any other type of debt, thing like that. It's snipping. All right.
Snip it real good.
The one that I reached out to you to ask about was the IULs. So besides term life, whole life, what is an IUL?
Okay, so we talked term life and we talked whole life. An IUL is essentially a type of whole life or a permanent type of life insurance that has an added benefit of a savings benefit, essentially. I like to describe it as playing in the stock market with a condom on. Basically, what that means is, if you go into the stock market, you get your stocks. It can go up, it can go down. The average over the past 5 years of the S&P 500 has been a 10% gains per year, and even beyond that, that's pretty much the standard, quote unquote. When the IUL basically is going to have a market cap, but it's also going to have a market floor. So in other words, typically, if you have a cap of say 7%, right? It may not be as high as the 10%, or if it does really, the S&P 500 does really well, 15, 20%, whatever the case may be. But if you play in cryptocurrencies, that at any given time you can get burned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as people have found out.
Yeah, the hard way.
Yeah.
So that's the idea of an IUL. It's exotic, it's sexy, it's not so much complicated, but it's something you should not go into lightly. I'll say that. Make sure you do plenty of research, ask plenty of questions before you sign on any dotted lines. Make sure you trust. Make sure you trust the agent that you're dealing with.
So the IUL, is it a life insurance policy that pays you, or is it something else?
It is two pieces to it. There's a life insurance piece, and then there's the savings piece. So they're both separate, but in the same policy at the same time.
Okay, so they would pay one amount per month, and part of it would go to each bucket.
Something like that. So basically, you have your base level. If your base level is $200, that just keeps the party going, and anything that you add on top of that goes into the other bucket, into the savings bucket.
Got it. Okay. So the policy has a baseline amount, and if you pay more than that, it goes into savings. Mm-hmm. And so the policy amount is just life insurance.
Yep.
And then the additional amount that you put in, it's what, as you described it, playing the stock market with the condom on. So it's more secure, safer. You're less likely to get burned. You're more likely to receive a return. It's like that security. Okay. Yep. All right. So you're kind of bringing it together. You're putting both options, investment fund, life insurance together. in a bucket.
Exactly.
Okay. So what
And-
happens with the amount of money you put into the policy, say like 10 years from now, 20 years from now? It's just going into your policy?
Yep, it goes into the policy, whether a $50,000 policy, $100,000 policy, or whatever the case may be. Granted, I will say that the baseline should be the last part of your concern for it. In other words, if you're only looking into it for the death benefit, then the IUL may not be the right option for you. You know, you have whole life options, you have term life options, and they may be better options. An IUL is designed for you to get a return on investment on it. So in other words, you want to put more money in. You want to fund your IUL to make sure that you're getting something back out of it.
Okay. How often do people get paid off of an IUL if they put in excess of, like, is it an annual thing? Do they have to wait until the end of something? Like, what is the payout?
Well, it's gonna be a build-up. It's compounded interest, basically.
Okay.
So in other words, if you get a return of, I'm just gonna say the 6% that we were talking about earlier. If you get the return on the 6% after a year, then on that next year you're getting a return on 106%, as opposed to just 100.
Okay, so you're getting paid annually, but it's
accruing interest.
Okay. All right. I wanted to make sure I understood that. Okay, cool. All right, that's what's up. So if someone is interested in having a life insurance policy as well as investing, IUL is their safest route, their most profitable route. Term life is something that you get, you can receive paid back if you live beyond the term. And the whole life is just that standard life insurance policy that we all know about, that you're just paying monthly for whenever that time comes. That's pretty clear. So it's just a matter of choosing what works for your situation.
There you go. And there's nothing wrong with having multiple policies.
Ah, that's good to know. So you can have more than one of these.
Yes.
Nice. It's snipping. All right.
Snip it real good.
That kind of leads into what I wanted to talk about, which was about the misinformation that's out there for people who are trying to address their end-of-life concerns in the present tense. And people are trying to say, don't give your kid ownership, put it in a trust. And they're saying that if you acquire ownership before your parent passes of their property, that you're going to pay capital gains tax. That is not accurate. Please, 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 everybody watching this, share this information, because you only pay capital gains tax on income that you actually bring in. This is income that you would have to pay taxes on no matter how the ownership is transferred. If you decided to sell the property, everybody has to pay capital gains tax when you make income, right, on the sale of real estate. Now, of course, if you are selling your primary residence, there's a lower tax bracket involved. But still in all, you're going to still have to address the tax from the profit. So what I want to encourage people to do is, number one, do your research. Find out the benefits of putting it in trust. The other version of it is a gift of equity, and you can speak to any lender about this. The beautiful thing about gift of equity, and I was telling this to Rashad earlier, I newly educated you on what this looks like. So let's say you, for example, if your parent or parents decided to give you the gift of equity in their property, they could give you 100% equity for the full value of the property. So if it's worth about $200,000 and they just give you the ownership $0, then you have now $200,000 of equity that you can now use to invest in other things. And that's the beauty of doing it now. You don't pay capital gains tax. There's you're gonna have property tax because you own it, and that's what your parents had anyway. But you are going to have the benefit of using that equity to then grow more wealth. Some parents, like one of my clients, for example, the son purchased the property for less than what it's worth from the parents. The parents were able to get about $120,000 that went to them. They were able to put that in their bank account immediately. But the property is actually worth above $200,000. So the son and his wife are now able to utilize that equity to do other investing, to continue to grow the family's wealth. And they are taking care of his parents. They're giving them income. They're affording them the opportunity to take vacations. This is a wealth growth move. I'm not saying don't put things into a trust, because there are some situations where that will be beneficial, but I'm sharing this to say that you need to do what works best for your family instead of listening to Instagram talking heads or TikTok talking heads, because that's what I'm going to call them from now on. And that's why it's so frustrating, because it's being shared. And I'm receiving these from messages from people that I've spoken to who are preparing to do similar things for their family, and they're being talked out of it. And I'm like, why wouldn't you? If you're a parent, why wouldn't you want your child to have access to this equity? Because if you're like 75, you may or may not be interested in what it takes to grow the wealth, but your kid could. And you're 75, let's say you're going to live for, several more years. If your kid has the capacity to take that equity and benefit both of you, why wouldn't you? So that's what I wanted to say. There's a lot more that I could add on to it to help, but I'm going to keep it short today because I really want people just to kind of get this going in their head, doing their own research. You can hit me up to have more conversations about it, because I'm all about generational wealth growth, not generational wealth delay. So there we go. What you want to add to that? Aww. All right, so Rashad, what happened?
I said what you said.
Okay,
everything
cool.
you said.
So how can people find you and reach out to you about setting up those term life or whole life policies and getting a
rjwilliams.agency. Pretty straightforward. Right. You find me on here, Bag Check Digital, but rjwilliams.agency. Go there. That one. Put the link in the description somewhere.
Oh, I'm gonna put it in the video and description. So
yeah, wherever links go, put them there. Cuatro, cinco. Did I tell you about French and the number 80?
Did I tell you about how Geminis, we have squirrel problems and we be like squirrel, and you just did it again?
I did, didn't I?
What do you gotta tell me?
How in French? Okay, so French numbers, they actually stop at 69.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Yeah,
because 70 is literally 60-10.
That's how you say it, yeah. Louis
in
Circleville
literal translation. And then 80 is literally 4 20s. Quatre vingt.
Like, it's not even following the pattern.
Like,
if you're doing 60-10, you should do 60-20, Just, maybe they wanted to give
Why are we stopping at 60?
Maybe they wanted to give an ode to marijuana, 420s.
But why are we stopping at 69?
I don't know. Maybe the French felt like they didn't need to count past 70.
Everybody else goes to 100. They go 10, 10, 10, 100. And then French was just like, yeah, I'm just going to stop at 69. Yeah. 70, 60, 10.
Maybe it's their favorite number.
60, 10?
69.
Or 420s.
69 and 420s. They like both of them. Ah, the French. Think about it.
Those weird French.
Anyways, that's going to be our B-roll. We're going to put that as the bloopers.
I'm about to say I may have offended a bunch of French people. Either that or they're like, yes, 80 is very weird.
They probably thought it was hilarious. I mean, they should. If they didn't, oh well.